Why will only 10% of the Christians around the world go up at the rapture? My premise is that rapture occurs when nuclear war occurs, when Russian attack on America occurs. What biblical evidence is there that Russia will attack America? Well, we read in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, the rapture has to wait until the revealing of the man of sin as the son of destruction. Now we can paraphrase this term, son of destruction, this way, the destroyer. Or we can define son of destruction as the destroyer. So we can paraphrase that verse this way. The rapture has to wait until the revealing of the destroyer takes place. Now, the revealing of somebody occurs in terms of that person's action. An arsonist is revealed by his setting fire. A painter is revealed by his painting a portrait. A destroyer is revealed by his committing some act of great destruction. So the way to interpret this verse is like this. The rapture occurs at the time of the revealing of the destroyer, when he commits his act of great destruction. Now we live at a time of mass destruction and weapons of mass destruction. So we should interpret this verse like this. The rapture occurs at the time of the use of weapons of mass destruction by the Antichrist, which reveals him to be the destroyer, the greatest or worst destroyer of all time. Now, what kind of destruction are we talking about? Well, we turn to a parallel passage. In Revelation 13:7, it says the beast, which is another name for the destroyer, the beast will make war against the saints, which means the Christian countries. And it says, it continues that he will overcome them, which means the Christian countries, and he will gain power by this war, by launching this war. He will gain power, quote, over every nation, unquote, which means the whole world, which gives us the reason why he launches destruction. He launches this war in order to gain the whole world, which is something no man has ever done before. So we see the rapture occurs in a wartime context. The rapture occurs as the Antichrist becomes the destroyer by launching a war which gains him the whole world. Doesn't this sound like World War? And isn't World War synonymous with nuclear war? So we're talking nuclear war here. Now, what kind of nation can launch this war? Well, if a non-superpower launches a war in order to take over the world, one of the superpowers could wipe that nation out. So this means this narrows the field down to the superpowers. Only a superpower can be expected to launch this war of taking over the world. Now there are two superpowers, America and Russia, and so America is not going to do this war. So that leaves Russia as the obvious choice as a nation which will launch nuclear war in order to take over the world, launch nuclear war against the Christian countries, which would mean the leading Christian countries, which means America and the countries of Europe, even though they are not they're not Christian right now, but historically they have been the leading Christian countries. So America and Europe are the places that Russia will attack in order to take over the world. Now, next thing I will do is explain to you how many Christians will be killed in America and in Europe. There are 330 million people in America, and let's say 2/3 of them are Christians. So if Russia bombs America and wipes out 1/2 of the population, which would mean 165 million, you take 2/3 of that, and you have basically 110 million Christians dying in America at the time of the Russian attack. And that would be the number of Christians that go up in the rapture as far as America is concerned. Now, why would I use the percentage? Why would I say 1/2 of the population would die? Christ says, talking about the rapture, he says 1 out of every 2 will be taken, which would mean taken up in the rapture. Well, let me change that. Let me modify that. He means 1 out of every 2 would be taken as far as they will die. So that means a survival rate of 50%. We have 330 million people in America. 1/2 of them would die. That would means 165 million. And then from that, 2/3 are Christians. So we take 2/3 out of 165 million. But at the same time that Russia bombs America, Russia also bombs 3 countries in Western Europe. That's based on Daniel 7, verse 8, where it says that 3 horns will be uprooted. There are 10 horns, and another horn comes up among the 10. That means Russia will come up among 10 countries in Western Europe. Actually, it's many more than 10, but 10 countries are focused on, and 3 countries will be bombed, and that's Britain, Germany, and Italy. Now, let's say 20 million people die. Well, let's say 20 million Christians die in those countries. And so that would be 60 million added to the 110 million Christians that die in America. We have a total of 170 million Christians dying in America and in Europe. Then we add 30 million Christians in South Korea dying at the same time that Russia bombs America and overruns Western Europe. And that's based on the idea that North Korea would bomb South Korea at that time. And let's say 30 million Christians die in South Korea, for a grand total of 200 million Christians dying and going up in the rapture, which occurs in a wartime setting like I just explained. Now, 200 million out of 2 billion Christians, because that's the population around the world of Christians in this world. 200 million out of 2 billion, that's 10%. And so that's how I get to 10% as the percentage of the Christians that will go up in the rapture. The Christians in South America will not go up in the rapture. Why not? Because Russia is not bombing South America. Russia is not going to bomb Central America. The Christians in Africa will not go up at the rapture. Why not? Because Russia is not going to bomb Africa. the Christians in Asia, most of them will not go up in the rapture. Why not? Because Russia is not going to bomb Asia. Now, what evidence do I have that only the Christians that get killed by a Russian attack or by North Korean attack, what evidence do I have that only those Christians go up at the rapture? Well, what I'm doing is I'm taking the nuclear war as synonymous with the rapture. And what evidence do I have for that? Well, think about it. When Russia bombs America, all the Christians, not all the Christians, half the Christians will go up, and at the same time. And the bodies of the Christians that live near the big cities, though the big cities are the targets of Russian attack, and the bodies of the Christians that live near the big cities, in or near the big cities, will be vaporized. So that will fulfill a certain aspect of the rapture, where it says, we will not all sleep, but we will all be changed in the twinkling of an eye. We will go from physical bodies to spiritual bodies. Well, that applies to the Christians in or near the big cities of America. They will not leave corpses that sleep, and because their bodies will be vaporized. Now, they'll go from physical bodies to spiritual bodies in the twinkle of an eye. And so that part will be fulfilled. That's in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 51, around 51 or 52, 53. And now there's another aspect of the rapture that would be fulfilled in nuclear war. Christ says, on the day of the Son of Man, which is synonymous with the rapture, the day of the rapture, he says they'll be where the vultures are, there the bodies. Where the bodies are, there the vultures will be gathered. He's talking about bodies that will be of people killed at the time of Russian attack. But these bodies are the bodies of people away from ground zero. They won't be vaporized because the heat of the fireballs will go straight up. So if you're outside of 5 miles away from ground zero, there'll be plenty of corpses. And so this particular passage, Luke 17, verse 34 through 37, it says 1 out of 2. And will survive. And so that's another aspect of the rapture. Another aspect of the rapture that would be fulfilled by Russian attack is the sounding of the trumpet of God. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16 through 17. And that's talking about the bombs, the sound of the bombs exploding at nuclear war. Another aspect of nuclear war that would be fulfilled by Russian attack is the spread from horizon to horizon, where Christians on one end of the horizon would be raptured, Christians on the other end of the horizon would be raptured. Now, if you're in Israel, America would be on the western horizon, and Japan and South Korea would be on the eastern edge of the horizon. And so those two poles would be where the rapture occurs, from one horizon all the way over to the other horizon. But the Christians in between those two poles would not be raptured, except the ones in military bases, American military bases, which would be hit by Russia. And so we can throw that part in, but I didn't get into that so far. So far we have like 3 or 4 aspects of the rapture that would be fulfilled by Russian attack. All right, another aspect of the rapture that would be fulfilled would be the sudden destruction, which is in chapter 5, verse 3 of 1 Thessalonians. And so that's about 5 aspects, or maybe even 6. And so we'll let it go at that. Now, there is another aspect. I don't remember it right now. Okay, let's go over what we've talked about so far. The Bible clearly indicates there will be a nuclear war, and it's in connection with Daniel 7, verse 8. It says there'll be 10 horns. Another horn comes up among the 10. That's talking about invasion of Europe, because Europe is the focal point of the fourth beast. This is talking about the fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire, in verse 7. Now, in verse 8, it's talking about the return of the Roman Empire, because Europe is put back under one-man rule, which is what characterized the Roman Empire. Each Caesar ruled Western Europe. So it was one-man rule. And so when Russia reinstitutes one-man rule over Western Europe, that is the return of the Roman Empire, which is talked about in the book of Revelation. But it's not just book of Revelation, it's in Daniel 7, verse 8. And so that's why Revelation talks about the return of the beast in 17, verse 8 and 11. It says, the beast that was, is not, and will come again, will rise out of the abyss. It's talking about the return of the beast, which is the Roman Empire, which is one-man rule over Europe. And Russian Empire will fulfill that. Russian conquest will fulfill that. And the idea is the rapture occurs at that time. Why? Because over 100 million Christians will leave the world at the same time. That's big. That's big. It isn't as big as these preachers make it out to be in their storybook version of the rapture. But Paul says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, but he says that when I grew up and became a man, I put aside childish things. Now we should, that's 1 Corinthians 13, verse 11. And we should think in those terms as far as the rapture. We have to put aside the childish version of the rapture, which is the idea that God blows a trumpet and all the Christians go up. And it's not like that. Okay. I'm going to write a transcript in the description box under the video. And so look for that transcript. And I'll try to give the Bible passages, the citations, so you'll know where I got these passages from. I expect the rapture and the Russian attack in the month of June, around the Pentecost, which is June 6th. It'll be when we go into, or get ready to go into, Venezuela to get rid of the dictator there. And Russia will claim that that is imperialist aggression that has to be stopped. So they'll say that Russia is justified in bombing America in order to stop our aggression. And it's not our aggression. That's not the reason they do it. They do it because they want to conquer the world. And they just use our going into Venezuela as an excuse. They want a fig leaf. So get ready for the 5-month trib, which is how long Russia will rule the world. And that's in Revelation 9, verse 5 and 10.